Right. Good evening. It is Wednesday, October 9. This is a regular meeting of the Norwich Selectboard. I'm Pam Smith, Chair. I'm joined here in the room by Mary Layton, Vice Chair, Priscilla Vincent, and Marcia Calloway, and also Town Manager Brendan Duffy. And on Zoom, we have Roger Arnold. So with that, the first thing on the agenda is the agenda. So does anyone have any comments on the agenda or any suggested changes? Okay, seeing none, I will ask the board about number 4, appointing deputy tree wardens. These are people who have been appointed to the Emerald Ash Borer group or subcommittee, whatever we're going to call it. And our tree warden, Matt Hall, has asked that we appoint these 2 individuals as deputy tree wardens. Do we want to do it through the request from Matt Hall, or do we want to ask these people to go through the appointment application process?
Have you looked at the statute? The statute says the legislative body of the municipality may appoint a deputy tree warden who shall serve under the direction of the tree warden and shall have the same duties and authority as the tree warden.
Right, and we asked the tree warden to do the application process. So my question is, do we want to do that, be consistent, or do we want to just take it from? Right, and we asked the tree warden to do the application process. So my question is, do we want to do?
Reference to statute 2 is actually in the handbook. I was pleased by, but I think we should not require them to go through the appointment process at this time, because also I think the Emerald Ash Borer situation is urgent, and I think they're qualified individuals. So
And we did appoint them to the Emerald Ash Borer group.
Exactly.
That's why they would be deputy tree
Yeah.
wardens to help us
So
out work.
I think they'd be very helpful, and I think it would be great to do it tonight.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so if there are no other changes in the agenda, would someone like to make a motion to incorporate that for number 4?
Let's see, how'd that go? I move to approve the agenda, including move to appoint deputy tree wardens. Or motion to,
Including the motion to
including the motion to
appoint deputy.
appoint deputy tree wardens.
Okay,
I'm happy to second that.
all right, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
No as to 2.
All right, and Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. 4 yes, 1 no. Okay. Number 2, the chair's report. Just 2 things this evening. I met with the town manager's office for the agenda setting meeting, and I had a telephone conversation with town council regarding number 9 on the agenda. So that's all I have for my report tonight. Okay, number 3, public comments for items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments? All right, I see Jan's hand up. Jan, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I wanted to make just a brief comment on the Tracy Hall Energy grant application. And so what concerns me, I'm not even talking about the content of whether we chose to get money to do a gas-fired boiler or a heat pump. What bothers me is that a specific choice was delineated in the grant application, which sounds to me like a policy question for this board to say what heat source you want. And there was discussion before about wood-fired boiler. And so I'm not sure what the flexibility is in that grant application, but I'm concerned about the process where what looks like a policy decision was made by grant application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I had that same question, and I guess we can talk about it when we get to correspondence, because that's where that grant application is in tonight's packet. Thank you for bringing that up, Jan. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, committee appointments. And we have Russell North here with us, who has applied to be a member of the Finance Committee. So, Russell, would you like to come up and have a seat and
Sure.
just tell us why you're interested in the position?
Certainly. I moved back to Norwich a year ago. My mother Myrtle had been a resident for a long time. And I lived here from 70 to 76, I believe. Memory goes as we get older. And I have always been interested in helping the community. And I do think I have some skills that are applicable to helping on the Finance Committee. I'm a CPA and have been one for 30-something years. I've served on 2 different school boards and been chair of one and vice chair of the other. So I understand school finance. Early in my career, I was an auditor and we did municipal auditing. So I understand that as well. And frankly, I believe it's going to be a difficult couple of years. And I think people willing to give their service, and by the way, thank you, need all the support they can get, because there are going to be some tough decisions and going to need support.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. North?
Yes.
I am impressed by your qualifications and your willingness to serve. I think it's excellent. I just hope the committee can get built up enough to be effective in itself. I'm not sure if it's very populated at this point.
I think we have 2 other members right now, so this would give us a minimum of 3.
So it would give us the minimum we need
Right.
for a quorum. Oh, that would be very good.
Can do some serious recruiting and get some other people.
Yeah, like recruiting would be good to build it up more. And I also understand well, back in the day, I think it used to be the municipal and the school, like trying to balance things out. So it could have quite a few members, and if you made a good team, there really could be some good perspective, I think. But I think, you're gonna be a little lonely if you are appointed at first, I think. It'll be small, but it could build up to something very effective and kind of, supportive, as you say.
At least in theory, initially, if it's small, there should be easy to get a consensus.
Well, I might be surprised, it's just Norwich. I don't know,
Wait a long time.
maybe, depends on who shows up, I think. Yeah,
So, well, first of all, the recent notice that went out showed that there were 3 open slots. So I didn't know if there was anybody at all appointed. But then I was looking at the Finance Committee charge. We're in the process right now of doing this handbook, and we're looking at the charges that everybody has. And it seems to me, it says advisory oversight responsibilities in the creation of annual budgets. And I think that was put together a long time ago. And this has nothing to do with you because your qualifications are terrific. It's just that we're in the process of doing this handbook, and I want to really, look at everything critically, which is what we were going to do, is meet with every committee. But given what we have learned recently, we can't be offloading our responsibility as a select board that is given to us by the legislature. So what I would recommend is that we look at this oversight, the whole charge, and specifically that language, and really think about what we need for a committee before we start appointing, because I think we want this to be effective. We do have some serious problems on the horizon, but I think we need to be careful about what that committee is doing and what the charge is. So I would recommend postponing this until we do that.
Very good.
I sort of envision the Finance Committee as being advisory only. And I think a fresh look is a good idea. And they might actually have insights that would inform a better charge. So I would be in favor of moving ahead. I think if we have people that want to be involved, that they can also help to inform how that charge would be written. So I would be more in favor of moving on it tonight.
So then I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Yes.
Are you on these boards currently, the Hartford School Board, the?
No, when I moved in July, of course, I had to resign my position on the Hartford School Board. So it was right through July of 2023.
Okay, so none of these apply at the moment.
I am on two boards right now as treasurer, the Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation and the Hartford Community Coalition.
Thank you.
I see Roger's hand is up. Roger, you have a question?
No, just a couple comments. Like I echo sort of a lot of what Marcia had said. I think too, the board's in the position to reject the
You keep freezing up, Roger. Maybe it's because of your video. Not sure.
Yes, if you could.
it's fine
yeah.
that my comment was just it's fine if it's an advisory, but you might remember that the last time this body was commissioned, they all resigned because their advice was not accepted. So I do think the charge should be looked at. Finally, there may be 3 members on the committee, but I think these terms have long expired. So this appointment tonight would be the sole member. So the committee would not meet until we actually have that quorum, or if these 2 people are still interested in serving, they would, depending on if their term has expired, they would probably need to be reappointed.
When I asked at our agenda setting meeting, Miranda said that the current members are Nicholas Wood and Cheryl Lindbergh. So Mr. North would be the 3rd member.
That's odd because.
I actually think Cheryl is a member of the committee.
She's an ex officio member.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
But by virtue of her office as treasurer, somebody said she should be on the finance committee.
So
And
does
she's a voting member.
that count towards its membership for the quorum? Because again, what does the choice say, right?
I'm kind of lost.
So I'm fine making this appointment I'm fine making this appointment because this person is qualified and presumably we should have a finance committee, but the charge and the membership question should be looked at in order for anything meaningful to happen.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure Mr. North understands that, we're in the process of reviewing these things and there may be some changes, and maybe you can even help us with some changes that you think are appropriate.
And I'd be happy to, in whatever the decision is. I understand right now there's some ambiguity and it's hard to go forward. So I can just put my name out there saying I'm willing to do whatever. And I certainly understand that the position by law has to be advisory. And much like a marriage, you're free to disagree with me. So it's, or the board, I should say the committee. So I understand. I just want to help. So whatever is the easiest and works for the board, I can handle it.
Okay, great. Well, I think you have a great attitude. Thank you. Okay, so we have Mr. North here, who has applied to be appointed to the Finance Committee for a 3-year term. And would someone like to make a motion?
I move to appoint Russell North to the Finance Committee for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Priscilla. If there are no further comments or questions, Mary, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Reservations, because I don't know how many people are on this committee now.
Well, according to Miranda, he will be number 3. Cheryl,
According to her
Nicholas
list.
Wood, and now Mr. Moore. Roger, how do you vote?
Sure, yes.
All right, thank you. And I'm a yes, it's unanimous. Thank you for coming forward and volunteering.
Thank you.
Okay, then the next thing is the appointment of deputy tree wardens. I have a memo from Matt Hall, our tree warden. And he has asked us to appoint Chris Rimmer and Doug Hardy. I see Doug is here on Zoom. Does anyone have any questions for him before we move forward.
Which one's Doug?
In the lower right corner.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, seeing no questions, would someone like to make a motion?
I move to appoint Doug Hardy as Deputy Tree Warden for a term ending March 2025.
Thank you,
I second.
thank you. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla,
Yes.
Marcia,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, unanimous. Okay. And thank you, Mr. Hardy, for volunteering for this position. And then we have one other appointment. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move to appoint Chris Rimmer as Deputy Tree Warden for a term ending March 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, seeing no comments or questions. Mary?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
didn't see you there. Come on up and introduce yourself.
Do all appointments have to be made through the select board? I'm Matt Hall, the tree warden, so
Oh, okay.
Hi, Matt.
I'm just wondering if I thought I read that I could just appoint people, but I didn't realize I had to go through the board in
It
order to
says
do
that the
that.
legislative body may appoint, and we are the legislative body.
So every person I might appoint would have to be approved through the select.
Yes. And we are moving forward with these individuals because they've already been appointed to the Emerald Ash Borer group
Right.
and not asking them to go through the application process. But if you were to come up with someone new that is not on that group or
Right.
the, I guess the Conservation Commission, is that who you're working with?
Well, the Conservation Committee has sort of got I guess, a subcommittee.
Yeah,
That's,
right.
and I think pretty much everybody who's on the Conservation Committee is now also is involved with the Emerald Ash Borer.
Right, okay. But if it was somebody outside of those groups, then we would expect to go through the application process
Okay.
to meet that person and speak with them
Okay.
before we appoint.
I have a question for Doug once you're done.
Sure, go ahead.
Doug, are you going to need 10?
No, this is Matt.
I mean, Matt, okay,
That's Doug.
sorry, that's Doug, you don't mix up. But you're the tree warden, I'm sorry. What I'm trying to get at is this emerald ash borer infestation is so extensive and it's all along the roads and it's hard to inventory. So what's the need for deputy tree wardens? That's what I'm not
You
sorry.
know, both Chris and Doug are retired. They have a little more time in their hands. I work full time, so if you really want to, do a survey and a really good inventory and sort of keep up with everything, all the trees that are, going to need to be,
Taken out,
or at least looked at.
right?
It's far more than one person can do, especially on a volunteer basis.
No, but if, we pass this, you'd have 2 more, but is that going to be enough? Or just start with that and see what the
Start
need
with
is?
that. I mean, we've both Chris and Doug and I have walked around with spray paint and
It seems.
and they know they know we're all looking for the same thing. We're all have the same idea in mind as far as what we feel is.
It's not what you're looking for, it's how many trees? Like, is it 1,000 trees?
In the town,
Yeah, along different roads?
probably 100,000 trees
Ooh, okay, along the roads.
along the roads, if not more.
Okay, see, that's trying to get the scale of
I
this,
live on New Boston Road, and I could point out at least 1,000 trees on that road.
but you're marking the ones that are imminent safety threats, right?
Right,
You can-
but there's lots of trees, and some of them are more at risk for coming down sooner. Some of them are, have branches that are leaning out over the road, which have potential for coming down
Mhm.
and, causing bodily harm. But there's still a lot of trees, and unless trees are inoculated, they're all going to die. And so they all, any tree that's close to the road and potentially across the road could potentially be a hazard. Now, I think there's lots of trees out there, and tree branches fall all the time, and this is going to be the same thing. One of the nice things, or one of the fortunate things about the ash is that the trees deteriorate and they just become very brittle, and they are more than likely to fall in small pieces.
Like, boom, like down.
No, but they're like
In small chunks. I see what
like
you're
the smallest branches fall
shedding.
first, and they just
Yeah.
break off in pieces.
That's what happened at my house.
Okay.
Yeah, there are different situations. There was an ash up on Hobson that fell, I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago. And I was out marking with Doug Hardy, and we came across, oh, look at this. Here's this tree that we had actually, we hadn't actually marked it with paint, but I had marked it with the flagging, and it had fallen down. It fell across the road. And I guess there was one up on Bragg Hill that they had a bunch of people lost power. I never actually looked at it.
So I have another question. So, it's like tree triage, right? You're going to find the real hazardous ones, but someone will have to follow up. You know what I mean? So is that our DPW? Are you envisioning, or do we just need to organize an effort to monitor it so we know when they fall down and who might go in and take care of it? Or because
I don't think the DPW has the.
Well, I don't either. We have to deal with it as a town.
Right. So,
Trying to ask questions.
So that's part of the idea of taking inventory, and you can monitor them.
So you know the scale of it and pretty much where some of them are anyway.
Yeah, where they are along the roadways. And it's just, we're just looking at stuff that's basically either in the public right of way or potentially are going to fall in the right of way.
All in it, yes.
So some of those trees may be outside of the right of way, but if they are going to fall in it, there's still, potentially a liability for the town.
Yes. I will just comment, my commute is between Union Village and the top of Thetford Hill. And I've been watching the ash trees die over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't see any marking up there. Like, I don't know what Thetford's doing, but
We haven't, I actually, Pam had actually called me this spring and said, hey, you should, go out and mark some of those trees that are, look like they need to come down. So I started doing that. It was probably February or March. Then I had knee surgery and I was out of commission for a couple of months.
Mhm.
And then the summer came along and we started, the Conservation Commission sort of stepped in.
taking a look, yeah.
And, I had gone around and I had been marking trees with flagging. And I had a bunch of general tree contractors look at trees, and I got some prices. I gave stuff to Brennan for, the removal of some of these trees. As far as I know, nothing's happened yet. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that.
Right, okay. And that can be expensive. If you take it down and remove it, that's what, 50 or 1,000 a tree or something like that.
Like one of the trees, it's like, the big tree is the one in Elm Street. I don't know if anybody's taking a look at that. It's just, 100 yards down on the left. And it's within the right of way, and it's a pretty big tree. And there's going to be debris that's going to fall on the road. And it's probably $1,000 to take down that tree.
Exactly. But that's, in a way, that's a good case because it's, it's not good, but it's one that clearly needs to come out in that organized fashion. But in the outback, if landowner said, just fell it back towards the property and leave it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, that's what I would recommend is
Right.
it's getting in a lot of cases, I think you can get a piece of equipment in there and you notch a tree like you're going to fall on and you just push it onto the landowner's property.
If they are okay with that, that would take care of.
Well, if it's on somebody's property, it's essentially their
It
responsibility.
could be on the right of way and they might agree that you could just, let it fall.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of
Strategies, right?
there's a lot of trees along the roads that fall into that category. They could just be pushed over and left. When trees fall in the woods,
Or scavenged or something.
if they fall, they lay on the ground and nobody finds it. It's just these are dying quickly and they're
Right.
gonna be an issue.
So Roger, you had your hand up, you were patiently waiting. Did you have a question or comment?
Well, I think it was alluded to that there was some coordination with the town manager's office. And so that was just my general interest. Seems like there's a small corporation developing around the Emerald Ash Borer at this point. We have the Conservation Commission and the task force and 3 tree wardens. And so is anything getting cut down and how is it getting paid for and managed? So I think the town manager's office just needs to be brought into the loop. And I think I think that conversation alluded to that happening, so that's great.
Right, and I think we'll have more conversation around this when we get to the budget.
And what I learned this year was with our tree that it had to be taken down in sections. It was so big, which was more expensive than just
Right.
felling it, even
Right.
though we had land that it could have fallen on. But I just wanted to point out to you that we're doing this handbook, and just in case there's any confusion, you're a creature of statute.
What's that?
You're a creature of statute. We have to appoint a tree warden.
Right.
And it says, who need not be a resident of the municipality. And then we may appoint other people, but it says the legislative body may appoint deputy wardens who shall serve, and that would be, you would tell us who,
Right.
and they shall have the same duties. But in the preceding paragraph, it looks like they don't have to be, unlike you, who has to be a resident, they don't have to be a resident. So that might help you if things get a little wild because there's trees falling all over the place. But anyway, that's in the
Well, yeah,
handbook.
we'd have to have somebody who was interested in it.
Well, yeah.
And probably someone who is local, because they may not want to travel.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's still a volunteer position, so.
Yeah.
And I haven't done any inventorying because I've been busy, making a living.
Working, yeah.
And when I was appointed tree warden, there were certain duties that I felt, was explained to me, and I felt, okay, I can handle those. Emerald ash bore's a completely different.
It's big,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a big deal.
Yeah.
When somebody calls you up from the board, you don't have to go do something.
Well, if somebody, what it's supposed to be is if somebody, there's a tree on somebody's property and or they think it's within the right of way and it's the town's responsibility, they can call me. I mean, maybe they call and talk to Brennan or.
Should talk to Brent.
Yeah, somebody. They say, well, call Matt Hall. And so I go out and look at it and I give them my opinion of that tree. In some cases, it is the town's responsibility. In other cases, it's not.
Well, we're grateful. I'm sorry that this has hit you.
Brendan,
I just want to add to the conversation. So I think there is a question right now about the responsibility and the ownership of a tree in the right of way, and that has financial implications. And I think that's really something we really need to get to the bottom of, is whose financial responsibility is if we have a large tree that's going to create a public safety hazard, and is that financially the town's responsibility, or is that the property owner's responsibility, or is there some way we could figure out how to split a cost to kind of ensure the public
is
good?
that something we should be running by town council?
I actually just sent an email to the VLCT
Great.
this afternoon to try to
Okay,
get a handle on that, because I think it's ambiguous right now as to who has that
I
responsibility.
mean, generally, any tree that's in the right of way it's a property owner's property.
Yes, I agree with that.
but whose liability is it?
Well,
But whose liability, right? Whose liability?
question has been, should we create this, large fund of taxpayer dollars to address the problems of, removing these problem trees? And I think that's truly a question that we have to get a handle on quickly as we go into the budget, because if we're not going to do that, we're going to say it's the property owner's responsibility. I also asked is, what authority would you have as a tree warden to compel someone to remove a tree deemed dangerous? Like, do you have that authority to say you must remove? So that's a question. I don't know.
Nothing I've read has said that I can say, you got to remove that tree or else, we're sending you to jail, whatever.
But we've had a recent, actually just another message came in that'll be in the packet for next week, of a gentleman, I think on Elm Street, the tree you're mentioning, who is, I guess making the statement that the town is responsible for removing that tree and has liability, even though it's on his property in the right of way. So that's a question. I think it's a big unknown, and it's going to have a lot of implications on how
We
the town
budget.
takes action there.
Priscilla?
It's a little bit of a sidebar, but if we're talking about a right of way, is that property owned by the town or by the abutting?
The town does not own the right of way. It's part of the landowner's land. The town has the right to do certain things within that area, but it's still owned by the landowner. It's on their deed.
I'm just thinking of Sweetland Farm, that's all. But we won't go there right now. We're talking about trees.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the table. If there are no further comments, I will ask for the vote. Marcia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, unanimous. So we have Chris Rimmer and Doug Hardy as your new deputy tree wardens.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Do we make the appointment for both people or just Doug Hardy? Were there both names in the motion? I don't recall.
Yep.
Yes, they were
It's two
they were
separate motions.
moved individually.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, number 5, fire department request to transfer funds. When we sold engine number 2, we were told that the chief would eventually come to us and ask for a transfer of these funds to the fire equipment fund number 6. So,
So Chipmunk on
yeah,
Zoom.
somebody needs to mute.
somebody typing.
Keyboard.
Who's not muted? Okay, all right, let's move on here. So does any, I don't think the chief is here tonight. I don't see him on the screen. Does anyone have any questions on this of Brennan before we make a motion?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, and I would entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the transfer of $45,000 from the sale of engine number 2 from the general fund to fund number 6, fire apparatus fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mary. There are no questions or discussion? Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, unanimous. Okay. All right, the next request comes from the recreation director. Unfortunately, this isn't on the wonderful form that Marcia created for this purpose. But we shall move ahead with it anyway, I guess. So this is a request for assistance to help someone pay their registration fees for participation in a recreation project. Are there any questions, any comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move,
Go ahead.
I move to authorize the expenditure of $495 from fund number 40, recreation scholarship, to pay a child's registration fees as requested in the September 19th, 2024 memo from the recreation director.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary.
Can I make one comment?
Certainly.
So rather than having a scholarship fund where we are asked to fund someone's fees, we should just have a criteria where someone qualifies and self-selects into that qualification, then they just won't be charged. So rather than having a long, elaborate process where they seek scholarship, they should just select a box and then that should be just done. We should develop whatever policy, we should consider developing whatever policy as opposed to this kind of process that I think is from an era of Charles Dickens, quite frankly.
Okay, Marcia. Thank you, Marcia.
Why don't we have that review when we go through the handbook?
This is a reserve fund.
I
It's
know.
under the control and auspices of the select board, so it has to go through this process.
Right. But I was just thinking we could talk it over with Bree when we get to that review process. Because she's making a recommendation, so we could maybe have an amalgamation of the two processes with, something along the lines of what Roger's talking about.
We should just like empower our staff to make these decisions and define the criteria for that decision making, as opposed to like having a process where, people who are in need for whatever reason or for whatever circumstances are like seeking the authorization from from a board. Like, I understand why we do it, but I'm saying we should just develop a policy to just not do it. That's
Well,
all.
it's the same as the Citizens Assistance Fund. It has to come through this board to be approved for an expenditure. And so
But it-
I don't see how
has-
we can prevent that.
Okay, I'm just saying it actually hasn't in the past, and I'm saying like that is probably like maybe a good practice. So you should just make clear a policy decision as opposed to making it an expenditure decision. But I've said enough. I think most of you get it. So that's it.
I believe these funds that come into the scholarship fund are donations. They are not town funds, they are donations, and they're under the control of the select board. And so it has to come to the select board for a decision to expend any of these funds, just as we do with the John Gerard Fund, just as we do with the Citizens Assistance Fund. I don't see how we can get around that. Mary, go ahead.
Maybe just in the motion, it would be less specific.
That's right.
Because the way it's written here, it I don't know, maybe somewhat of an invasion of privacy, just it describes a little bit of the situation. So it could be written in a more neutral way.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
it's to release basically $500 of scholarship funds or something.
So we can tick the box of the process for a reserve fund, but we can also preserve people's privacy.
Privacy, yeah, just.
I don't see a person's name here, so I don't understand the concern about privacy. There's,
Well,
the
I don't know,
person's-
maybe there's one child that needs help and people read the minutes and go, oh, that family.
Yeah. I think it's
it's the
just a-
same with the Citizens Assistance Fund. If somebody requests money for a furnace, like they did a couple of years ago, you know, someone asked for $3,000 for a furnace. It's just, we have to have an amount and we have to have a purpose.
May I comment on that?
Certainly.
Yeah, well, and maybe the same type of discretion applies to the Citizens Fund as well. Just that you're just not quite as specific.
Just because we've done it in the past doesn't mean you have to keep doing it if it,
All right, well,
society moves on.
Well,
we can discuss this when we get to reviewing these things in the handbook. All right, so we have a motion. If there are no further comments, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, unanimous. Okay, the next item on the list is DPW FY25 salt bids. And we have a memo from Chris Kaufman outlining the two bids that he got. He's recommending that we go with American Rock Salt Company. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Priscilla?
Just some comments. I looked at, I mean, it's great to have the different bids, but I looked at, okay, if that's the price per ton and we think we need 1,800 tons, unless I did my math wrong, that comes out to $154,980. And I looked at what was budgeted for that this year, which was $125,000. So, we're talking another $31,000 more than we budgeted. And I'm just wondering if we're being really hit by a lot of unexpected materials costs, because when we discussed the snow plowing contract with Chase a couple of meetings ago, again, the budget was 65 and the contract came in at 105. And I'm just concerned as we go into budgeting for next year, if we've been seriously under budgeting some of these kind of rather necessary expenses.
Okay, well, I think when they quote 1,800 tons as the estimate, that doesn't mean that we're going to have 1,800 tons delivered, right, Brennan? We have that we may have some inventory on hand, but we asked them to quote this based on if we need
If we
up
need
to
that.
1,800 tons, what would be our price? And then they quote based on that. But we only order what we need to get through the season. So it could well be that we don't bring in that much. We may stay within budget. Any other questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to accept the bid from American Rock Salt Company of $86.10 per ton, including delivery.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right. Mary, how do you vote?
Oh, yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, unanimous. Okay, now we're at number 8, town manager annual performance review, and that we need to have a motion for an executive session to discuss that. And we do have a time limitation.
Yep.
We have another executive session at 7:30, so we're allowing 20 minutes for this to get through it.
So I'll make that motion. Move to enter executive session under 1 VSA section 313A3 to discuss the evaluation of any employee, it being the town manager's annual performance review, and to invite the town manager as appropriate.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Marcia. Okay. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Recording stopped.
All right, now I have a
We're in executive
7:12.
session at 7:12.
7:12. Okay, thank you. I have a logistical question. Because Roger is on Zoom, I need to understand how we might
Do this.
do this.
Marcia Calloway has a computer
Are you on as co-host?
I am on this as me, so you can,
Do you want to use yours and I'll co-host you and then you move people out?
or
Or
we can use yours however you like.
happy to use this computer and move there and be back if you want me in there.
Okay, let's do that. If that simplifies things, let's do it that way. We need to,
Okay, so I move to enter public session.
A second? Have to vote, right?
right.
Yeah.
Getting it backward here, I'm rushing. Okay, Priscilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we're back in public session at 7:30.
Timing.
Vote is unanimous. Okay, now we need to go into another executive session to meet with town council. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A1.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes, unanimous. Okay, second motion?
I move to enter executive session under 1 VSA section 313A1A to discuss the town manager's contract and to invite town council and the town manager as may be necessary.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We are in executive session at 7:31.
One.
Recording stopped.
I move to enter public session.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We're back in public session at
Took a little too long.
In public session.
It was 8:17.
8:18.
At 8:17.
Oh,
Okay.
whatever.
Okay,
Hold on a sec here. I need to report that.
was that somebody with a first and last name?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, but was it anybody we know or some random person from Lorna?
Random.
Uh,
Wow, if that was
first and
somebody
last
local.
name, hard to tell.
Okay. All right,
I have a motion.
yes.
I move to direct town council to provide the town manager with the draft of the quote amendment number 1 to that certain employment agreement for the town manager.
As presented in executive session.
I will take that amendment.
Thank you.
Could
All
you
right,
say
so
it
it's
one
a
more
motion
time?
by Marcia,
I move to direct the town council to provide the town manager with the draft of amendment, quote, amendment number 1 to that certain employment agreement for the town manager as presented in executive session.
Thank you.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia,
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a no. Okay. Moving on. Number 10, the FY 26 budget guidance. So we have an email from Barry Rosalinda, our finance director, to Brennan, giving us some information about the potential surplus in the FY 24 budget. Does anyone have any questions?
Thought it was excellent.
It was very informative. And I had suspected that unfilled positions might be a potential source of a surplus. So it's nice to quantify that a little bit.
Yeah, like half of it.
Well,
Exactly.
I would like to know what is the reason that we have 6% increase in the revenue? What is comprises $358,773 that we were not anticipating to come in as revenue?
It's non-tax, non-property tax.
Well, it doesn't say that. It
So,
just says,
so there is actually a bullet point there that I think does explain that after the calculation there.
First bullet point.
Which is,
In the budget, the revenue amounts budgeted for property tax related items was less than what was received. The property tax categories comprised approximately 82% of the revenue dollars over budget. Even though the overall revenue received was higher than what was budgeted, many revenue items fell below the budgeted amounts.
So the property tax projection, I think, is the key piece there.
well, I looked at those numbers and trying to find my notes. We had $74,359 more in bank interest that was earned than what we had projected. And that, I believe, is a function of the CDs that the treasurer has suggested that we take out. $155,547 was property tax dollars that came in above what was projected. We got money from Windsor County. We got money from property tax interest and property tax collection fees. And we received more Vermont gas tax money, but I couldn't come up with a total of 358. I came up with 325,000 and change. So I'm just wondering, are we budgeting correctly on the revenue side?
I don't think we necessarily knew that we were going to get 5%, or that banks were going to be offering 5% this year, but they did.
Well, I guess just in general, and Barry's here, she can chime in if she wants. I think what we were asked to do at the last meeting was to come back and try to explain the surplus. So without getting into the minutia of the nickels and dimes, that's kind of the big picture there is our revenues were higher than expected and our expenses were a little lower than expected, which led to, again, a good problem to have at this point, which is a fairly significant surplus, although you will note Barry is disclaimed that 623 is going to be our final number. And so I think we'll have a little less than that maybe. But nonetheless, it's something we will look at again, I guess, closely as we craft the next budget here for fiscal year 26. See if we can be closer to, an even budget, I guess is what we're always shooting for, but a surplus is the right problem to have, not the deficit.
Well, it's certainly preferable to deficits. So I guess what we need to come back to is the question of what kind of guidance are we going to give our staff on what kind of increase we would find acceptable.
Can I make a quick comment to that?
Sure.
So yes, that is truly what we're hoping to get out of tonight's meeting is a number to shoot for here. You will note at the bottom of the page one there, bottom of page two, the health insurance update. So, as you know, this is one of those kind of not in our control type of increases, and they're looking at basically a 22% increase for the Blue Cross Blue Shield, assuming that everything stayed exactly as it is with personnel. And obviously our aspiration is that we're going to fill some of these positions, which will increase our health insurance liability. So I just, again, want to point out that some of these are not 2 or 3% increases that we're dealing with here. And I guess this would be a good time to talk about it. I just want to throw out some other kind of known at this point expenses that we didn't really factor for last year that are going to hit us this year. One of those is the 12.5% share of the Hemlock Road FEMA monies. So what we're looking at right now, and this is good news, I think, we have an obligation from FEMA at this point for about $1.3 million. And that is going to be paying the majority of our mitigation for Hemlock Road. But the town is responsible for 12.5%. So basically, if you remember, 75, 25, the state and the town split 12.5% of that 25. So we're looking at about $166,000 that would be, something we would need to have obligated going into this next fiscal year when that money's going to get expended. We have the 3 large culvert projects, also FEMA. Those are not yet obligated. So I put this out there just as a heads up. We're probably looking at about $160,000 for the town share of that as well. So right there, you might have $350,000 in monies that we need to know are there so that we can meet that commitment for the match that we're going to be contributing. On the DPW side, we also have the Moore Lane Bridge. I think we need to figure out, hopefully in this budgeting season, what, if any, monies we want to put aside to have as mitigation there for that. And that's kind of an unknown at this moment. Then there are a couple others that I'm just going to point out. We have the discussion about the Emerald Ash Borer that we had earlier today. I think, again, we have a small amount of money that was set aside a number of years ago that's not going to pay for much of anything. So we should be thinking about, do we want to plan ahead this next fiscal year and going forward for monies to be used to mitigate taking down infested ash trees that are going to be dead and dying and creating liability. We have the Tracy Hall project, which again, we put a significant amount of money into last year by the voters' affirmation. But do we want to look at some of that surplus is going into a Tracy Hall into that same fund? So we have built that up a bit more. We've also kind of related to Tracy Hall building, an elevator that is reaching the end of its useful life, much like our boilers. And that's a big, expensive upgrade. If we were to modernize that, we might be looking even in the line of $250,000 to $300,000. And I forwarded some information we got from our elevator contractor to our architectural firm and said, you need to build this into the study that we're going to be looking at. So that'll be included, but that's kind of a standalone. We need to have an elevator to be ADA compliant, and it's expensive. And the one we have now is really obsolete to the point where they can't find parts. And that's going to create a problem at some point. And then the other consideration at some point might be, again, if we have a surplus, do we want to put any of that into tax relief like we did in this past year? So with that, good news. I just want people to be realistic and reasonable, so that we can do the same when trying to put a budget together. And I gotta say, 2 or 3% is probably just not possible for us. I think that 7 to 8% range, we can come back with something that will be, I think, very lean, but maybe possible.
Well, Roger brought this up at our last meeting, and I have to agree that I think it's a better way to look at our expenses, and that is give us the operating budget separate from what money we need to put into reserve funds. And a lot of what you pointed out will be reserve fund expenditures, Moore Lane Bridge, Hemlock Road. These are all bridges, things like that go through reserve funds, and we should look at that separately as to what we need to do to bolster those funds so that we have the money available to do that work. In looking at the budget, I noted that there were some things that were in this budget that should not be in the next one. We should not overspend our finance officer wage by $68,000.
Yeah.
We are eliminating the rec assistant for $41,000. Radio maintenance, which was the purchase of the radios for the police cruisers, that was almost $61,000. So those are things that shouldn't be in the next budget. So I'd like to see, what do we absolutely have to have for operational expense? And then what do we need to plan for as
For reserve funds.
for reserve funds, and keep those separate, because we really need to plan differently for day-to-day life and future capital expenses, or setting aside money for reappraisals or whatever.
Am I wrong? Was the finance office paying for Joyce and Barry? So that wasn't like a over budget. That was paying for people.
Well, we were over what we budgeted because we were paying
Right.
2 people, and we were paying Joyce a lot more as a contractor than we would have if she was an employee.
Right, so if you look at the amount, it says we budgeted $91,054, but we spent $159,659. So we were over $68,605. We know why we were over. What I'm saying is these are things that shouldn't be
Carry
part of
over.
our consideration for the next budget.
No, they won't be.
So we've got some things that'll be quite a bit lower, and some things that will be higher, like health insurance. And so if we look at these as 2 separate budgets, one for operational expense and one for reserve funds, I think that gives a clearer picture of where we need to land. So I would like us to give guidance on the operational side. And we'll have to look at the reserve funds based on what information is coming back to us from.
Well, can we call the reserve funds the capital budget? Like just
Well,
for.
except that the capital budget does not include the $40,000 that we give to the reappraisal fund to build that up. So I think we need to call it the reserve fund budget. Because it's not all monies that get set aside in reserve funds are for capital expenditures.
I have a question about when we have a FEMA project, what reserve fund would that come out of? Is that our emergency fund or what?
Well, I don't think it should be.
Well, because, you know, the Hemlock Road, it's not a bridge, it's not the bridge fund, right? Is it a
Right.
disaster? It comes out of our
So one
disaster
thought,
fund. It's just asking. Okay.
one thought or suggestion, knowing what we faced over the last 2 years and knowing what we're probably going to face going into the future with weather events would be to create a fund that we would call a disaster.
I thought we had one.
Well, that's like an emergency fund if we've overspent monies and we had no other place to pull it from. But I don't think that's a great place to do it. And we want to replace that.
Well, there was a comment in the last audit that what we call our emergency reserve fund was not considered definitive enough to be classified as a reserve fund. They were, forget the word that was used anyway. So it was not uncommitted, but something to that effect. I'd have to look it up.
Not
Anyway,
specific enough or
it
something.
wasn't specific enough to fall into a category that the auditor was comfortable with. He didn't consider it a designated fund.
I remember talking to Barry about that. I think she can explain that too.
And so-
Anyway, so I think if we do something like money for Hemlock Road, we should specifically put an article on the town warrant that says, do the voters want to spend X number of dollars for Hemlock Road improvement?
Well, the problem with doing that is that if the voters say no, the town is still needing to move forward with the project, right? So that would be an example, I think, of what we wouldn't ask the voters to use a surplus amount for. I think that is something we need to budget for. And again, Mary, I don't know if I answered your question correctly. I think we could create something where we would build it up for issues such as Hemlock Road or repair that would kind of have money in the future for these type of things, because we didn't plan for it really. You know, we're gonna have to look at that hard when we get into this and say where would we pull that from? Because again, in my opinion, that shouldn't be asking the voters to affirm a use of the surplus. That's gonna have to be, we know we have this money when we go out to bid in November or December for the project.
For more land.
No, the more lane, I think we have more flexibility, but the
Okay.
FEMA is like, the town has to be obligating money to have that expense.
Yeah, it's like a contract with the government. They're giving us something
Yeah.
and these are the terms.
I think the auditor was referring to that fund as unassigned because it wasn't specific enough.
I think,
I think we were trying to avoid that.
Yeah,
that fund,
so
but
I
we
think
didn't
we
do a
need
good
to-
job of it.
Yeah.
I think
So,
Barry can explain this.
oh, sorry, Roger. Go ahead.
I mean, so I think Barry should explain that because I don't think it's that big of a deal, or something that we need to put undue attention on. So my question for Brennan was, like, I think he listed some good things that we need to be aware of, and it's good that we have this estimate of a surplus. So I assume that about half of that surplus is already committed based on some of those projects that are mentioned. So my next question is, with whatever surplus that remains, do we get to 6%? If we use that? And then if we do, I'm happy to adopt the budget tomorrow. It's that. But I would say I did not hear 7 or 8% last time we met, and I continue to say that I would like to see a 3 to 6% increase, and you should use the surplus in a way that gets us there responsibly. That's it.
Well, so if I'm hearing you, Roger, you're suggesting we build a budget much like we did last year and then use the surplus to buy it down to a 6% increase. Is that?
I don't think we should continue to like use the language of buying down. I think like if you use the surplus to make the appropriate appropriations to the reserve funds, you will just be doing budgeting. You wouldn't be buying down anything. So
Well,
if you're telling me that you can't get to 6% without injecting surplus funds into an operating budget, then I do think we need to talk about how we need to have a very good conversation, because politically we can't sell to the voters that the money we didn't spend from last year is like getting you the tax rate, the increased tax rate for this year, you know, at a modest rate. Like that's like not the kind of
Well,
salesmanship and politicking that's very good.
so Roger, as you know, the surplus has to get approved by the voters, right? So we can't count on building a budget with a surplus amount coming into it. We would have to build a budget and then say, like we did last year, we're at 12%, but if we put a surplus amount into this, the actual rate of the increase is lower than that. And I don't know if that's a great idea or not. I'm just.
So there's two things. So I have a question. I understand that the practices are you could use the surplus to and ask the voters if you're using it because it's unrestricted, right? Or don't you just put it you book it under the revenue and people pass it by virtue of passing a budget, although they don't approve revenue? Isn't that the other way to do it?
There are two ways to do this, according to the VLCT municipal budgeting workshop that I attended. You can put it in as revenue to offset expense, or you can make it a separate warrant article.
Okay, so this is what I would say. So I would think you take that surplus and you make the appropriate warrant article questions around these reserve funds, and our dutiful and wonderful Norwich citizens who generally trust our judgment around budgeting and would see the exercise as transparent would vote accordingly on that. If you as town manager and our town staff or our department heads are to doesn't make you comfortable, then just book it under revenue and that's that. So I really, again, like my directive is 3 to 6%. Use the surplus as a way to make the appropriations to the reserve funds, and we're really good. But if you can't do the 3 to 6% with the surplus, then like I have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns.
And my concern is that we don't just say, oh, well, let's, inflation is 3%, so let's add 3% to every line item. We have to look at line items and what was our actual expense? And what do we anticipate will be the expense in the coming year? Will it, were we over and we can find a way to bring it back down to a reasonable number? Or, were we under and we budgeted way too high? We don't need to budget that much money this next time for that line item. Every line item should be looked at by the staff, not by the board, by the staff to give us a realistic number for the coming year.
What they did last year.
And we ended up with a lot of extra money.
I don't know. I mean, I do think we've always carried a surplus. It's more than usual because I think generally because of staffing, right? But I think we should use it and then like start budgeting at like a standard 3 to 6%, because like why do we can't increase taxes and then have huge surpluses? It's like, how do you sell that to your community? Like
exactly.
So
thank you, Roger.
So I said my point. I don't know where the 7-8% comes from. From Barry's great work, I'm more sold that we can do it on 3 to 6. Yeah.
Okay. To move this forward, if we could, again, 3 to 6 is a pretty big range. Could I try to get again a consensus of the board as to what a number is that Barry and I can work off of for the operating budget and come back with we've been able to do it or we haven't been able to do it, and there's why. So I thought I heard not 3 to 6, but 6 to 7 was kind of what I left the meeting with as far as the majority. Maybe I misunderstood that, but that would to me seem like a reasonable number. 7. Can I propose?
And we're talking strictly operational budget, not the reserve funds.
Operational budget would be would be crafted to keep us under a 7% increase. And again, I don't know how hard that's going to be, but we'll have to get into it and figure it out.
But does that suggest that we then, because we absolutely can't put on the warrant, will you vote to fix Hemlock Road?
No,
So,
but that wouldn't necessarily be operating budget, as I'm
That would be the
understanding.
other
That would be
reserve,
reserve, which would be the
Right.
capital budget, which is, again, at this point in Barry's memo, she's called out that if we did everything the way we had left it last year, we're slightly less, it's basically a flat increase there. So we would have to build these big commitment numbers into that and see what happens. It's gonna go up, obviously. But I don't know by what percentage.
so, I mean, I think we have to look at these things that are non-negotiable. We have to have culverts. We have to have an ADA compliant elevator, right? And then look at what we need to run our town, what does the fire department need? What does everybody need? That's, to me, is the non-negotiable stuff, right? If we then say, well, we can't put any more money towards Tracy Hall, or we can't, I don't know what else here is potentially, maybe we don't do anything with Moore Lane Bridge except tear it down, but that's gonna cost a lot. So, we're in a position where it might be politically wonderful to be able to say we're not gonna have any increases, but that's really ignoring what's going on in the rest of the world. We're kind of stuck.
Right, but we also need to make sure that we put in our must-haves, not our nice-to-haves.
Didn't I just say that?
Yeah. We have to tighten our
That's
belt
been
as
made
much as we
abundantly
can.
clear early in the process. This
So,
is something we will be working towards. Again, I'm just hoping, and I don't want to belabor this anymore. Maybe we should just move on and do our best and come back with something.
But you have to.
I'd like to have a target. That's kind of what we were hoping to have.
All right, so I will pull the board. Marcia, what is your percentage?
6.
Mary?
7.
Mark?
Sorry, I'll go with 7.
Priscilla?
I'm just not happy with the way this whole thought process is going on. And if you want me to make it very brief, I'll just say, keep it flat, see what you can do.
So 0.
Okay, Roger, what's your number?
They know I agree at 6. I've said it so many times.
That's not a
You gotta
number.
pick one.
That's a range because I think it's really insulting to just give a number. I'm suggesting
But
that
so 6 is your top number.
do
So
your
Roger's is
work,
6.
do your jobs, but don't give me something more than 6. I'll just vote no for that budget if it's more than 6. Okay, I'll make it
Okay.
clear. And you know
All
what
right.
that means because 2 other people will too. So that's your directive, Brennan.
Okay, and I would like to be as close to flat as we can possibly be.
So 0.
I'm a 0. And that's on the operational side, not the reserve side. I understand reserve is totally different, but on the operational side, I would like to be as close to 0 as we can be.
So if you average that, it's 4.
4, right? That's going to be hard, I think.
It's gonna be
I
impossible.
just think it's going to not be possible.
Well, it's a target. It's not,
I think you then have to turn to people and say, so we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do this. There won't be
Police
people,
department, let's chop by 10%. No, police,
right? I mean,
right? Isn't that about right?
probably.
Of a percentage of our total budget? I mean, what are we really talking about here?
but we're not etching this number in concrete and saying he absolutely cannot go over this number. It's a target.
Well, that's true.
There's
It's-
only
it's
one year
a-
where it never went over that anyway.
Well, but it's also the target is, I mean, if we average it, it's 4 and 0, really? You guys, 0?
Nobody wants
How
to
can we
pay.
have 0 and not reduce services?
Because there are places where we will be saving money, like on the finance director, like on the assistant rec director, like on radios.
And we're
We're
going
paying
up.
off the $27,000 on the that's owed on the tower, that's the last payment.
Yep,
There are lots
There
of
will be
places where there's
savings.
money that can be
okay.
applied in other places.
I think that's commendable to try to save like that, but I just don't see how it can end up being a flat budget,
And
even with a savings, but it's good to look.
Right, but I truly believe we will not come in at zero, but I'd like to be as close to that as possible.
So you're saying be thrifty,
It's
really
like-
take a look, you
It's
know.
like a job takes as much time as you allow for it. You know, if you allow a 6% increase, then it's going to be a 6% increase. So
And remember that you get what you pay for.
Priscilla?
I just feel like this person who's out there and you're all here. What I would really like to see is take the list of things that we know we have to do, like the things you were mentioning, Brendan, like, you know, Hemlock Road, culverts, Moore Lane Bridge, Emerald Ash Borer, some things with Tracy Hall, not just the elevators, but maybe, the heating system isn't gonna make it this, you know. It's like,
Don't forget the
okay.
health insurance increase.
right,
for
and
all
just
the
say, you know,
employees.
this, we kind of don't really have. Well, let's put all those things together with estimates and see what that comes out. And then say, okay, because I can't do one without the other kind of, because we're gonna come up with a total. And then I really want to go line by line through everybody's department budgets, because that's the only way we're gonna find where's something like, do you really need that? And I'm sure
That's
there are
his-
little things that can be paired.
That's his job. Statutorily, we don't.
Well, at some point, we will see a line by line budget, because that's what gets published in the town report. And I'd like to see that when we're in the process of developing a budget that we recommend to the town.
That's what they give us every year on Excel spreadsheets.
Okay, I'm,
Ready to take public comment? At all? I mean, I thought.
well,
that's part of the process.
Roger has his hand up, so I'm gonna let Roger go first and then I'll call on you, Matt. Thank you.
And I mean, I think Brennan and Barry know this, like we probably wouldn't use tax dollars for a project like Tracy Hall. So like a lot of these items that were just listed as like not necessarily already built into the budget, but additional, they would probably be subject to a bond. Like you're going to do anything architecturally, anything for the heating, like anything for the elevator, you would do that as part of a major like bonding project. And so I don't think you would necessarily use exclusively like just the tax dollar revenue for that. So I think that's also part of the conversation, like anything that is not achievable, anything that needs to be done that is not achievable with this directive should be sorted out for other ways to get it done. And that's when the board can say, okay, we need to be flexible about where the money comes for this project. And then
Yes, depending on what we get as a number for Tracy Hall, we
And
may
then-
have to go the bond route.
yeah, so you go from there, but like, yeah, do not build a budget with like, 7 or 8%. Neither, you don't want to build something that we're not supportive of. But I'm saying that if you have these items that you may have items that you're excluding as a result of this directive, and I want to hear about them, and then we may or may not, as one member may or may not be open to understanding more, right? But there you go.
Okay, all right, thank you, Roger. Matt, you want to come up and make your comment?
When I was looking through these numbers, you like, unless you're anticipating not filling the staffing so if you were to add all the numbers that you gain, all the revenue that you saved by not staffing planning, recreation, police, and public works, that works out to like $314,000 in savings. But we only actually got back in expenses, $269,000. So like there was some, the way I'm reading it, there was actually some overages in the budget if it had been, spent as anticipated. And then the revenue side of things, we clearly made a great call to use some CDs, and we got better, returns on our money there. And that's like a little bit unexpected as well. So you're winding up almost with this like overage that's an unexpected
Info.
gift.
Yeah.
that you could use to spend on some of the things that are not gifts, like the Hemlock Ridge and maybe more lane and stuff like that. But like to expect, but to look at this and then expect that there's a lot to either cut or not increase a little bit in a budget, I don't think is very realistic. So like to ask for, guidance of, a specific percentage bump seems fairly reasonable considering that, everything goes up every year.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I would like to have this meeting end no later than 9:30 tonight. So I'd like to keep things moving. I know Brennan has a long drive to get home. And
Can we give Brennan some guidance?
right, so let's do that. And I would like to add to the suggested motion that I have here that we're setting a maximum increase or a target increase for the operational budget, setting aside what we might have to do in reserve funds, other needs to fund some of these special projects. So it would be setting a target increase of X% in the FY26 operational budget.
Are you counting the allocations that we make each year to the reserve funds as operating or not? Brennan?
Not operating there. I think we need to look at this as two separate pots of money. What do we need to keep the lights on? And what do we need over here on the side to do those investments that we need to do for equipment or culverts or bridges or whatever?
I understand.
So two silos for now.
But there's still one budget.
It's still in one budget, but two silos. And I think we need to set a target increase for the operational side and look at the reserve fund expenditures and special project expenditures separately. Because those things we don't have a lot of control over.
So now you're talking about presentation, but what we're talking about for guidance for him is one budget, one percentage.
No, I disagree.
Well, I'm looking at your proposed motion.
Right, and I just said I would add the word FY26 operational budget. The budget to keep the lights on, to keep the staff paid. And we can't set a target for the reserve fund side because we just don't know what's coming down the pike in terms of costs of Moore Lane Bridge or some of these other things.
We know.
Yeah.
Roger?
I think Marcia was going to say the same thing, which is you have a capital budget. You do know what the allocations are projected for this year, which is why I asked my question.
Well, what I'm saying is that would also include these special projects like Hemlock Road and, hopefully we'll have some numbers on Tracy Hall and Emerald Ash Borer and some of these other things that we need to get more information before we can put numbers to them. So my hope is that we can give Brennan some guidance on what kind of increase is our target for just the operational side of the budget.
I'm not comfortable with that. I think we need to give him a.
Then you're going to put a limit on what can be done in reserve funds or special projects?
Nope.
Well, that's what I interpret by saying if we're incorporating the whole budget, that includes reserve funds.
Well, let's ask the third person here. Were you thinking?
I think it would be simpler actually to break it down by operating budget. Give me a number, vary a number, we'll do what we can, we'll come back with it.
Thank you.
That's all I want to do tonight.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion?
Doesn't sound like it.
All right, I'll move to set a target increase of 0% in the FY budget, FY26 operational budget.
Okay.
I bet I'm going to be voted down, but I've
Is
made
there
a
a
specific.
second? I'll second it. So we can have a vote. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Marcia?
No.
Roger?
No.
Priscilla?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so would someone else like to make a motion? I
I
guess
move to
I'm-
set a maximum increase of 6% in the operational budget.
I will second.
Okay, so we have a motion of 6%. And a second. And was that,
Seconded.
I did.
okay, and that was 6% for the operational budget?
Operational budget.
Okay, all right, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Priscilla?
No.
And I'm a no. 6%,
Well, max of 6%.
a max of 6%. Well, that's the target. We can't, like I said, it can't be etched in stone. Target is to stay within 6%. Okay, moving on. Now we come to the select board handbook. It's now 9 o'clock. I don't know how much you would like to get accomplished on this tonight, Marcia, so I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you tell us where you'd like to go with this. So go ahead.
Just one thing, I'll just get this out of the way. One of those stupid things that happens, but at the back, at the end of it, in Marshall, where we all would sign, I'm listed as Patricia Vincent.
Where? On the signature page.
Yeah, on the signature page is page 66. I've been called Patricia before, but I'm not going to sign my name that way.
The draft. I don't know what's wrong.
It's okay. It happens. I'm also called Phyllis sometimes.
Phyllis.
So
I'll try that. Well, okay, before I got married, I was Pam Thompson, but many times people would hear me say Pat Johnson. So,
Okay.
Okay, so we've read, I hope, the memo, and so basically I'm suggesting a name convention because we want some consistency and it makes it easier for people to understand who does what. And as I said, committees are creations of select boards, commissions and boards are creatures of statute. Subcommittees are formed, have been formed with various labels. So I think Pam put in a motion here for changing the wording so that subcommittee would be all the current and future subcommittees. And then Miranda has made a nice change to the subcommittee request form. And as I explained, I sat down with her and it was very productive because she needs to know who's on what and how to advertise things, etc. So that's the genesis of that nice new form, which should be filled out every time we have a group, because again, even if it doesn't need to be blessed by us, it needs to go to the town manager's office and they'll send out the letters and all that stuff. And then they have got in the town manager's office, Heidi's working on this super duper new Excel spreadsheet that will keep track of all that. And they'll be able to post this. I'm speaking for your office, but they'll be able to take an extract of that and post it on the website so that people can, anybody can know what positions are open. And so what I'm recommending is that the select board start to schedule groups for future agenda items to review the charges with those groups and discuss the work. Any concerns they have, if they have budget needs. Bless you. And I think this should sort of be done by triage because we've got the budget process coming up. So if we look at people who we know are going to need money, look at them first. On the third page, I put the list of groups that are ready for review. And I would say, choose what you want. The book is already out of date because the Historic Preservation Commission sent me something. And this was just like textbook why this is an important thing to have. I don't know if you guys know it, but they are a, what's it called? They're a public, oh God, I've forgotten it. They're a government on their own.
Oh, like the
Recognized-
municipality?
Not a municipality, it's got a
Some kind of
specific
government
name.
entity?
Yeah,
Oh,
and it's recognized by the Agency of Development in the state, and they've gone through certification, and
Wow.
it's pretty cool. So that's now in the handbook.
okay.
Also, the open meeting law stuff is now published online, so that can go in the handbook. But I just had.
The Secretary of State was going to issue that stuff?
No, they haven't done their
Haven't
work
done that.
yet, but the actual amendments have been pushed into the old form, or the old text.
Mhm.
And so the actual law as it stands now can be found online.
So it's current.
It's current. So you could just start at the top and go through, Conservation Commission, given what we know, we're going to have monies that we need for ash borers, and hopefully Brennan will have some information from the VLCT about what other people are doing about right-of-ways, so that we can make some decisions about what we're going to have to budget for. And I would say do one a meeting, because we always have enough to do.
I did sit down and go through the document and look at who had budgets.
And some of that was just, I was doing it quickly.
Yeah, Cemetery Commission has their own budget, but we have no control over that. We give them an annual appropriation,
Yeah, but the point for the book was just,
but they don't,
they got one or they don't got one.
well, okay, but I thought it was whether we consider that as part of our budget, and we don't, we just do their annual appropriation. The Energy Committee does have a budget. It's in the town manager's budget. So I made a list of the Board of Abatement and Board of Civil Authority have budgets. Those are usually set by the town clerk for what she needs to do their work, but there's also the tax adjustment money that comes through that group. The Board of Abatement has a budget of like $21,000 this year to possibly abate taxes, whether it's like on Hemlock Road where the house burned down, or somebody comes in and says, I'm just no longer able to pay these taxes, and the Board of Abatement.
So that's to
goes
cover
through
the
that.
amounts of the abatements, not administrative costs, right? Okay.
Yep.
Mhm.
Conservation Commission has a small budget of like $4,800. Emerald Ash Borer, the Energy Committee, and then Solid Waste also has a small budget. And there's also a Solid Waste Equipment Fund that I learned when I went through the reserve funds earlier today. So we've got, I don't know if we want to look at the Board of Abatement and Board of Civil Authority, or just leave that. But there's Conservation Commission, Emerald Ash Borer, Energy Committee. Those are the top three that I think we should be looking at, and then maybe Solid Waste as a fourth.
Really, I mean, I think the genesis of this was to put everything in one bucket, so we knew who was out there, and more importantly, so people in town knew what was out there, so they could volunteer and that sort of thing. But the groups that we have control over, that's who I think we should be meeting with to say, so what do you, what?
Right, but these are the ones with budgetary considerations, so maybe we triage those as the ones we meet with first, and then
That's what I
work with
recommend.
the others, yeah.
Right.
So I would say Conservation and Emerald Ash Borer, maybe that's one that we can do together, and then Energy Committee and Solid Waste. So maybe two meetings, do it Conservation and Emerald Ash Borer in one, and Energy and Solid Waste in another meeting. Yeah. So when would we like to do that?
Well, if it's budgetary, we're gonna be starting budgets, so we probably want to do it sooner than later and just start budgeting, putting time on our agenda for them right away.
Okay.
So the next agenda for conservation and Emerald Ash Borer?
Sounds fine. Okay. So this is for October 23rd.
So this would
And we'll
be,
talk to them about their budgetary needs and review their pages in the book.
so we're just scheduling, not barring motions or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just organizing this, right? Without having to move it.
And then I think our November meeting would be the 13th, and we can do energy and solid waste at the November 13 meeting. And hopefully by then, maybe at the second meeting in November, we'll have a budget from finance and the town manager to start looking at. Okay,
So I'm interested in this effort on your motion sheet where it says to have the word subcommittee in the name of all the current and future subcommittees. I think that's good for consistency. I wanted to, know if others agree that we'd want to consider that.
would
It's on
you
your
like to
motion.
make that
I'll
motion?
just move it, yeah. Okay. I move to have the word subcommittee in the name of all current and future subcommittees.
Right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Right, do we have any further discussion or comments on that? Roger, you have your hand up.
It was for a different matter. So just to be clear, the subcommittee is on, what are we applying subcommittee to now and going?
Well, right now we have the Emerald Ash Borer Group. And Marcia's suggestion is we should call them the Emerald Ash Borer Subcommittee and make sure that as we approve subcommittees in the future, that we would be consistent in the naming, the nomenclature.
So right now, it would be the Emerald Ash Borer Subcommittee, because they're called the Management Group, the Trails Subcommittee, because they're called Trails Committee.
Solar sighting working group. I came across that the other day.
Right,
I think that was done to avoid them being a subcommittee that is under appointment by this board. There are two different, am I saying that right, Brennan? There are two different designations. You can have a working group that isn't appointed by the board if under the planning committee,
From the planning commission.
the planning commission.
So they can do that, but we can't. Because that term working group has been a real,
I'm not sure about that.
That was
Rat's
the way
nest for
around
us.
not having a recognized subcommittee, was to make it
I think that's trouble.
It is trouble. I'm
That's
not- I'm not
trouble.
sure let's hold on that one.
Yeah, that was what I understood.
Well, we'll read the letter again.
Okay.
I would just, my comment on it is just, I heard it earlier when we were appointing deputy foresters who work with the forester, who consult with the Emerald Ash Borer Group, who is under the auspices of the planning committee, and just, I'm exhausted by this. Like, I don't know why we would just, and meanwhile, no damn trees are getting cut. So like, I don't understand the intellectual legs we are weaving here. Like, it's fine, but like ultimately they're a public body under law and they will warn their meetings to accordingly. But like these names should provide clarity. And I think all it's doing is that we are intellectually wrought here in Norwich. So it's fine, but a little, I doubt its efficacy. Like, can't they just be a group? Why do they they exist because we created them and they advise us. So I don't know why you're calling them a subcommittee. Are they advising other people?
It was very difficult when I was trying to write this. And it became clear to me as I was reading this that, and Miranda said, oh yeah, that's the way it is. Some are created by the board, they're creatures of us, and they're a committee, whereas others are created by statute. And when you start trying to, the commissions and the boards, and so when you start talking about subcommittees, if you start calling them something else, I think it becomes problematic as we learned. And going back to Dylan's rule and all the stuff that we went through, people have to sort of be blessed by this group in order to exist, unless they use their own people, not outside people. But no matter how and who they are, Brennan's office has to know who they are so that they can keep track of them. If nothing else, so that, and the term end dates, that's the other thing that I meant to put in here, and I think I did. But going forward, I think actually Miranda put it in her new form that going forward, we have to have term end dates for all of these so that they can keep track of them as well.
So,
Right.
so the Trails Committee, for example, is a subcommittee of whom?
Conservation Commission.
Okay, and everyone's cool with that on this
Are
board.
you not?
I'm just asking, because why are we so we like Marcia is presenting us that they need to be called subcommittees, and it's because we agree that they are subcommittee of another committee. Do we agree with that or no?
Well, we were told that
Fox and socks.
yeah. If nothing else, it makes it easier to talk about them, but yeah, because they're reporting, they're not independent actors, right?
They're advisory committees, subcommittees of a parent committee. And this is the structure that we've had. And I think it makes sense to have standardized nomenclature. And it also helps if you put together an organizational chart, that if you have a parent committee, then you have the subcommittees under that parent committee. So I think this is a good idea.
Okay.
So, Mary?
I just think the working group has gotten to be, I kind of liked it when I first heard it, and I thought, yeah, you can kind of peel people off, they can do some good research and bring it back to the parent group, but we got into a lot of trouble with that. We got a lawsuit about that.
And they're supposed to still follow the open meeting law.
Exactly. So I like the standardized version.
We do have a motion on the table.
We do
have
have
more,
more,
yes.
yes. And so in the interest of keeping things moving,
We vote.
I would like to have the vote. So Mary, how do you vote?
I'm going to vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla? Yes. Roger?
Yeah.
Oh,
And I'm a yes, so it's unanimous.
surprise, surprise.
You call them all subcommittees of the parent committee.
Now, the final thing that I wanted to point out was that we had talked about adding a little section on grants and how that was to be done. So Brennan has blessed that language. It's on page 5 of the handbook, as well as budgets and reimbursement.
Yes. So that was actually why my hand was up, if I may.
And can Roger speak?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite absorb what you said, Roger, sorry.
So my hand was up to that point about budgets.
Okay,
So I think if we allow or create budgets for committees, it gives them the idea that they have control over budgets, and they don't. So they can advise on how town funds can be expended, but ultimately the town manager expends funds, or the board authorizes him to do so. So I think there should just be one line item that says budget for committee purposes, and then they can do some kind of process that Brennan designates or form to release of those funds. There shouldn't be these budgets because ultimately they don't control the expenditure of those funds.
so that would, yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
So that would mean that we wouldn't necessarily have to change this language, but it would mean a definite shift for the town manager.
I don't
Yeah.
understand. I don't quite understand.
He runs one line item for all committees.
Okay, Brennan has something he'd like to offer.
So I'll give the example here. So we have a solid waste committee who has projects that they like to have money to be able to pursue. And there's never been anything formalized to say, okay, solid waste committee, you have $1,000 in the fiscal year 25 budget to use for printing flyers, whatever it might be. That has come out in in various parts through the DPW budget. So like the Better Bin contract that was pulled out of one of the lines for DPW. I think it would be a whole lot cleaner every fiscal year to be able to ask the committees to say, what do you anticipate needing for money and budgeting for it, and put in a specific line in that says, okay, the solid waste committee has asked for $1,000 in fiscal year 26. It's there, they know how much it is, and they can track the expenditures out of that with the authorization of the town manager as the purchasing agent. But basically, as opposed to them coming and saying, we want to do something, where would we find the money every time they want to do something?
I agree.
So that's the process.
The Energy Committee went to Herb a number of years ago and asked him to put the budget in for them for their different projects. And so they are in under the town manager's department. They had $1,828 available in FY24 and spent $133. So that's why I'm saying we need to look at what are actual expenditures, what are the projects you have in mind, and what do you think that's going to cost, and budget realistically.
So that's my point exactly in codifying this, is
Right.
any subcommittee that's been created by the select board would have an opportunity during the budgeting process to come and make a pitch. And then the select board can say, well, it's not 0%, so we can't have it. That's kind of a.
All right.
Or they
No
could say,
snarkiness.
or they could say it's $1,000. And we didn't budget for that, but we think what you're going to use it for is appropriate. So here's $1,000 in the budget for next year.
Well,
So
the other thing is it encourages them to embark on different projects and, really function as a group, rather than just saying, well, you can come and meet and talk about things, but you can't do any projects because you don't have any money.
I
So I
mean,
think,
that-
Roger, go
that's,
ahead.
that's like a nightmare. Budget $5,000 and like have them fill out a form and get the money when they have something to do. We're gonna
But
sit
then
here.
they're
I don't-
buying for that money.
I can't. No, it should be in no one's interest to sit and hear about the $400 project that a committee has envisioned. I want to hear about it in a form that goes into the packet. So budget a amount for all committee work, and then have Brennan manage it through a process.
Well, maybe we get them to give us their numbers and then we total them all up and put them in one line item. But then Brennan
Delicious. I love that.
Brennan needs to then keep track of, well, what did you ask for? And are you staying within, the confines of what you requested?
Sounds
That
great.
puts extra work on his office.
I know he can do it.
Anyway, so Marcia, I put a couple of other motions on the sheet. I'm not sure that or one more, I guess. Do we need motions to talk about who we're gonna meet with next, or just
We
do
just,
that by consensus?
yeah, I was asking.
We
that.
already-
We just
we
sort of
kinda did.
decided it.
We sort of
Yeah.
decided it.
Yeah, all right, so we don't need a motion for that, so I'll cross that out. Okay, anything else that you feel that we should deal with tonight as it relates to this handbook?
No, just especially read the red bits because those are new, and this is a organic thing. It keeps changing as I get information. I still need stuff from the planning commission.
You mentioned a couple of things in here that were to be determined or something, and I was kind of confused by that. What committees that are to be formed, or
I was told by the Conservation Commission that they have a new one that they're going to be submitting.
okay. All right. So if that's everything you needed done on that tonight, we should move on.
And thank you. Marcia, for
Yes,
all the
thank you.
work.
This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay, next thing is correspondence. So I'll just briefly flip through what we have received in correspondence. Some of these we may want to talk about a little bit more. We have an email from Peter Orner talking about his concerns about pedestrian safety and walkability. I did notice on the listserv digest this morning that there was a post from Chief Romei saying that they have done a 2-week study on Beaver Meadow Road, just north of Moore Lane, and over the course of 2 weeks, It captured speed data on 17,255 vehicles. The overall average was 25 miles per hour, the speed limit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So people are paying attention. The next thing is the MERP grant application that Jan brought up earlier. And
Yeah, can we discuss that?
I think we should discuss it a little bit. One question I had was, if this is granted, if we get this money, are we obligated to spend the money as it is listed here, like 11.3, replace existing boiler with high efficiency propane boiler
Yeah.
and install low temperature heating distribution system, install air to heat pump units to serve gymnasium? Would we be obligated to?
So let me explain the
Okay,
process first, so people understand it. So this was all taken from the energy audit as the recommended. That's why that is a propane heated system. That has not been determined that we would use that. I think it was put in, as all of these were, as, you know, potential projects that we could, if we were granted money, we would look at. So that's why that's in there. And as we know, we've had multiple years of discussion about heating systems, and now that would be, you know, implemented or what would be appropriate. So we're a long way from that, but we can't just put a question mark and say we want $160,000 for something. I'm talking with Harry Falconer. I think it's a long shot that we're going to get any significant funding out of this. So it's probably a moot point. If somehow we did, I think there probably is some flexibility to say, hey, we need to have an internal discussion about what the town would like to see for renewable energy heating plant and go from there. But yeah, we're supposed to know by the end of October whether we've gotten any of this. And if somehow we have a significant amount of money, we can talk about it more.
okay,
Okay.
all right, great, thank you.
The ADA improvements clearly don't include the elevator. It's only 54,000.
Yeah, but that probably wasn't studied in an energy audit. That's
True.
So all of this, again, when Two Rivers put all of these together for all of the constituent towns, they were just using the facts that were in that MERP energy report to fill out the form.
Okay. Linda Mully wrote to me personally and expressed her concerns about the increasing budgets, and my response to her is here, explaining that, you know, we just do the municipal side. We don't have any control over the school budget. We have a request from Barry Rotman. Apparently, because this year we're paying off the bond on the tower over at the DPW garage near the transfer station, we can now request that some of the cell carriers like Verizon or AT&T put a panel on the tower. And so Barry has asked us to look into that. I don't know what the process is for approaching these. I know they came to us about doing something over here on the town green. And that's up to the school whether they do that. That's their land. But he says in here that he has reached out to Miranda and the town manager several times about this, and they assure me they're working on this. I've not had any progress reports, and it has been a while. Can you help? So I guess, Brendan, maybe you could reach out to Barry and give him an update on where we are with that.
I'd like to know the update too.
Well, if I may.
Sure.
So this came in probably over a month ago. It was late summer. And I think it's an interesting suggestion. I don't see any harm in pursuing it. It's really been a capacity issue of, you know, making time to focus on something like this. So I think, you know, timing wise, I'd like to get through the next 2 months of budgeting, and we're going to be doing that. I think this is a good project for early 2026, and we could pursue an RFP and see who is out there as a carrier that might want to have an antenna. I haven't found anything in our research so far that would say we are precluded from doing this. It's our tower, we own it, and there might be some limit to how many antennas would be placed there that we'd have to figure out, but that would be my thought is.
Yeah, he says in here that we agreed not to add a commercial carrier for 10 years until the loan was paid. The loan is finally paid off in fiscal year 25. So we're at that
No,
point where we can,
I have differing data, but
okay,
to the effect that, yes, at some point we have paid off that loan. I believe it is paid off. I saw no preclusions anywhere that we couldn't do anything while we were paying it off. But
the audit for 2023 says that it looks like it gets paid off in 2025, but anyway.
I have the bond,
But as long as it's paid off, we can pursue that. And I think you're right. After the budget gets done and dusted,
so
would be a good time.
we can put that on hold for till the end of the year and look at that for projects for next year. I think that would be good.
Okay,
And I had looked into it too, because Barry called me first. And so there's a lot of information that I unearthed, and it looked like there was a contract. And I sent that to Brian. So does the bond, is it the bond the same as the contract?
I've never, do you send me a contract?
No, not a contract.
I never
It was-
found any contract, and Miranda looked, so that's kind of been what we've been delaying on, is we're trying to understand the situation. I don't know that there was ever a contract. I think there was certainly a loan agreement with the Vermont Bond Bank for $275,000 that we entered into, and we've been paying off annually, and I think that's expired. We've made our payment. I don't see any preclusion at all to do what we want with our tower.
okay. All right, so we'll look at that in the new year. We have an email from John Farrell saying he supported Jen Shepherd's request that we discontinue the fireworks at the Norwich Fair because of the noise and the air pollution. Chris Clement has asked if we have a potential OSHA violation at the transfer station. Maybe this is something that should be looked at and reported back on one of the town manager reports. If not in October, then maybe November. We should know if we're in violation of OSHA regulations out there.
Well, if I may, so it sounds like Ms. Clement has taken upon herself to make a report to OSHA, which is actually the entity that we're talking about. And I have not heard anything. I think
She says, I'm not filing a complaint.
she contacted OSHA, so I think we would wait and hear from OSHA. I see no reason to pursue a complaint of this sort at the moment.
Well, I think it'd be good to know if we have some kind of obligation to provide a certain level of sanitation.
Which we do.
Okay. All right. The next thing is Peter Orner talking about the speed signs not working. And again, the chief's post this morning talked about fixing the one on Union Village Road. Tracy Kowecki has expressed support for Bruce General's request to limit budget increases. We have a request from the Prudential Committee of the Fire District to dissolve the Land Management Council and return the Land Management Council's funds that we hold in reserve. This is probably something we should make a future agenda item.
Yeah, I have a concern about that. We have a deed, and you don't just sort of abrogate it, but we also had a article voted in 2021, which gave a tax exemption until 2027. So if the listers then gave another tax exemption, that doesn't void a deed for development rights. And I think we need to talk to town council about the development rights that we certainly have under town vote until 2027, apparently.
Why do you think it's 2027 when it's a 5-year?
Because it was 2021 that the vote happened, and it said it was for 4 years.
It's usually 5 years.
And so that would, if you said effective 2022, that would be the 2027.
Are you talking fiscal year?
I'm talking just 5 years according to the article, so
So it'd be 5 years from March, whatever, of 2021.
22, I don't know, but anyway, at least 26. So we need to see council.
I think it should be an agenda item. I found it very confusing of the rights that were granted, the rights that were taken away, the authority.
Nothing's been
of
taken.
Many, well, I'm not sure. There's a new, isn't there a new status with the state that the land is, not to be developed? And also that a tax abatement through the state. I mean, the whole thing is just, to me, extremely confusing what it was trying to relay.
But I don't think that the lister's decision can abrogate a deed.
Well, I just think that it should be an agenda item to go through a number of issues with
Yeah.
all of that correspondence
And we would
and
need
all
to-
of the actions. So
I don't think a copy of the deed was part of the
No.
attachments.
What?
Was it?
The deed's in there, but there's,
the deeds for, one of these granted forever and ever
it's a deed.
time frames, right?
Right.
And then suddenly it's changed.
It
Like you,
isn't.
well, I mean, it's implied that it's changed. I just think it's a mess. It's a hot mess.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess. We don't need to talk about it now, but I think we need an agenda
But
item
we
for it
can't, I don't think we can talk about it intelligently without attorneys.
without somebody to help sort it out.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
But deciding to do that could be an agenda.
So what is the next step? To forward this communication from Dan officer to town council and ask
Can't we,
some
So-
advice? Roger, go ahead.
can't we just like ask Brennan to look into it and then ask them to write back? The other thing is like, why should the town and our legal services be employed when if they're asking for something, like have their lawyers do that work and then give our lawyers something to respond to? Like, why should we incur the cost? So I would just like ask Brennan to engage with the people seeking the exemption.
Well, it seems to me that there's almost a conflict of laws here, because you've got the listers doing something in their capacity, which attempts to abrogate a deed, which was executed by the select board and another town governmental entity. And so you've got a conflict. And in the meantime, we've got development rights, which maybe we want to use, but they haven't been abrogated, I don't think. And
It seemed to imply that. That's why it's so confusing.
well, anybody can say anything, but is it true?
Well, I would like to know if it is or it isn't, like some clarity from whatever direction is helpful. So,
Okay, so we will make this a future agenda item, but we will not determine an exact date for that until we get more information.
Well, if I may, so this would be my suggestion. Set this as a future agenda item, invite the Prudential Committee to come in and explain what exactly it is that they're proposing occurs here and be able to react to that. If again, we feel like this is inappropriate, then it might be seeking our legal counsel to see is this reasonable and allowed. But to me, trying to figure something out without a real question to ask is again kind of just nebulous. We're going to spend a lot of legal fees on what, like, do we agree this? We don't want to dissolve and give up our development rights of the parcel. I mean, that would be something we would say to our council, we don't want to do this. Do we need to? Again, to me, it seems like there's more discussion that we need to figure out before we start engaging council.
Right off the top of my head, my questions would be, can or should listers do something when the town has voted something else? Right?
that's what I thought too.
And how does that affect, if at all, our development rights?
Which again, if I understand it, were more recreational rights. I don't think there was ever in 20 years
No, I don't understand it that way. I think they were more general.
It says
says development rights.
development rights and recreation use rights.
Yeah.
So
it's
two different
development.
categories.
Is there such a thing
Well-
as recreation use rights in law? Like, like,
Apparently, I
The
don't
term
know.
development rights as used herein shall mean the right to place and or improve any structure or improvement, including without limitation dwellings, barns, mobile homes, roads, utility lines, fences, or
Yeah,
sheds.
it's very general.
Yeah, but there was consideration given, in return for not taxing you, we have the development rights. If we subsequently taxed you, then it reverts, but there's no other, and we didn't. Now we've given them a vote to not tax them, and the listers have said they won't tax them. But I don't think it does anything to the deed.
Well,
Well, I guess I'm
Agenda item.
I'm confused, is our development rights of a parcel we don't actually own, like we would have to come in with a developer and say, I don't know, it's very confusing to me how that development of a parcel
It's complex.
by an outside entity would have a project in it. So that would be my thought, if you agree, put it on the agenda, have them come in and let's hear
All right,
exactly what it is we're going.
all right, we'll see when.
They have requested that this be figured out by the end of the year.
Okay,
I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but I think it would be nice not to just say, well, sometime around Thanksgiving, we'll put it on the agenda. I don't think that.
all right, well, we'll look at the agenda for the next meeting and see how
Full it is.
busy it gets and see if we can find time on our agenda and make sure that someone from the Prudential Committee is available to meet with us. So.
I mean, I also think you should probably let them know that it's unlikely that we would have the time. We have to go into budget season, and I wouldn't necessarily say this is pressing, considering we have until 2027.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do. All right, the next communication is from Lee Stepbacher. Expressed concern about ever increasing budgets. We have email from Chris Katuki with comments on the personnel policy. Specifically, he mentioned at-will employment and the carryover and payout of accumulated vacation hours does not mirror those of the CBA. Lily Truman has submitted some updated information on her request for an MOU. We're going to put that on the October 23rd agenda after Brenda gets more information back from town council and
So I believe the decision we made was we were gonna have town council available for that meeting.
right, we would do an executive session.
Just want to be clear, we're not asking for free information, we're asking them to come to the meeting and be able to talk about the contract that's being proposed.
Right.
And also the whether or not we have to have a standalone sexual harassment policy. Is that one of the other?
Two
Right.
separate discussions.
Yeah.
And that one might not be executive session, because I don't know if
Okay.
it meets the.
Criteria, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So what do we need to know in order to pass the personnel policies? Where are we on that as an agenda item? Sorry if this is not what we should be talking about now.
What do we need to know?
Yeah, so like the personnel policies have not been adopted, and so like what is the next step with that?
Well,
Brendan, you want to
Well,
respond to that?
yeah, from the last meeting, we had a 3-2 vote. It did not pass, and the discussion was we were going to invite our town attorney to be able to answer the remaining questions that were out there and hopefully be able to reach a consensus to pass the personnel policy.
And that may include an executive session for attorney-client.
It was as vague as that, Roger. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of specific questions left. We just had people that couldn't vote for things that they didn't agree with.
But what would be the legal questions, right? Because consulting them for their legal expertise at, several $100s an hour. What is the legal questions we would need answers to for the adoption of the personnel policies? If there are no legal questions, I would say there are possible reasons to consult counsel for the MOU, but are there reasons to consult counsel for the personnel policies? That question is
Yes.
for the board.
So wasn't that, and Roger, I think you brought it up, do we need to have a standalone sexual harassment policy or not?
Okay,
But
well,
then-
that can be answered
That
in
was,
email.
you specifically brought that up, and that was that we decided, yes, that council could lend some, advice on that.
So that is the only legal question we have for them on the personnel policies then?
Well, the
Because that's an
MOU is part of
email.
it as appendix,
MOU and Exhibit B.
right? Because it's a appendix, right? Or is
All
it
right, so,
exhibit?
okay.
Appendix.
We-
So is the appendix and the sexual harassment, two things.
Okay, so we'll be talking to him about Exhibit B. Okay, because
Yeah,
the
I mean,
one question is,
it's specific. It's specific to those two things.
yes, I would just not invite counsel to a session for a very technical question about the sexual harassment policy, but it seems like there are other things that we need to discuss with him, because the goal is to approve personnel policies.
Well, excuse me, may I speak some more to Roger?
Sure.
Okay. Roger, you're the one who brought this up, okay? Do we?
I voted
I'm
yes.
sorry.
I voted yes.
No,
for the
no, 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 no. You said,
Or
do we,
Mary.
should we have a separate, do we need to have a separate sexual harassment policy or not? As a matter of legality. You brought this up,
Yes, but the.
okay?
but we
So
need to
why are we
invite-
suddenly saying that council can't answer it because it's technical? Tell me.
I'm saying that it is technical and it doesn't require them to come in person. They just need to answer that question in an email. So my
Like
question.
yes or no? Is what you
yes.
meant?
So I'm,
Okay, thank
so
you
I'm
for
speaking,
clarifying.
I'm
Thank you, thank
Point of
you,
order.
thank you.
I think it might, point of order, I think it might be substantive. So
Yes.
that's why.
Okay, so it's 9:45, we're 15 minutes past my goal of 9:30. Let's move on. Bonnie Mundy provided us some information at the last meeting regarding the assistant town clerk. So that's in the packet. And so that is everything we have for correspondence. So I would entertain a motion to accept correspondence.
I move to accept all correspondence.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Okay, Marcia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mary,
I vote yes.
Priscilla,
Yes.
Roger,
yes.
and I'm a yes, unanimous. Great, thank you. Okay. The minutes of September 25th. Any comments or questions on that?
Nice job.
I had one minor correction. Under the budget guidance, right in the middle of that paragraph on page 4, it says a surplus of the current budget. Should say surplus of the FY24 budget.
That makes sense.
Okay, that's my only comment on that. Everything else looked great. So any other comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the September 25th, 2024 minutes as amended.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Okay, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Mary, could you send me the Word document and I'll make that correction and send it on to Miranda?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next thing is our AP warrants. We have 2 of them. I had a quick question on one of these, and I don't know if I can answer this off the top of its head, but I noticed that DPW has some kind of an Adobe subscription for $20 a month, and just wondered what program they're using. Any clue?
Nope.
Okay. Not a lot of money, I just was curious. So we have 2 warrants. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve AP warrant number 1186 in the amount of $257.99 to be paid from the general fund.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. There are no questions or comments? Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, and then the second warrant?
Let's see.
Big one.
Okay, I move to approve AP warrant number 1188 in the amount of $45 to be paid from the general fund.
Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. All right. Any questions or comments? Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay. All right. Okay, Priscilla, if you would sign these and pass them along. I've lost the, oh, there's the paper clip. It's the last two pages to sign. Okay, the last thing we have here is the Great River Hydro Wilder Dam relicensing shared legal services agreement. So Brennan has shared with us a document from Monahan Safar. It's directed to Hartford, Hanover, Lebanon, and Norwich. Brennan, do you want to give us a little background on this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So this has been discussed at the last two meetings in the town manager's report last few months. There's been some ongoing discussion about collaborating as a block of folks in the Wilder Dam vicinity. And all of the other towns have agreed that they would like to pursue this. And I agree it's a good idea. So it's before the board just because this does kind of reach into a contract for services that the board would approve. And I guess that's it. I think, again, we're talking about up to, from the initial quote they gave us, up to probably $2,800 to $3,000. So I might suggest amending the motion if we're going to approve this to give us the authority to spend up to that, so we don't have to come back if we say we've spent $1,500 and we want to spend $500 more to keep the process going. It would just be simpler to approve a higher amount, but
I got the 1,500 out of the document.
it was broken down into phases there, and we agreed as the town managers, we wanted to kind of keep an eye on any costs that were going to exceed that. But I again, if we cap this at 1,500 and then there's a need to spend more money, we would conceivably have to come back and go through this at the select board level again, which,
Okay, so you're recommending that we approve up to 3,000?
yes.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? Roger, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Do our attorneys know that we are engaging other attorneys on this set of questions?
They do not. We haven't engaged SPF in any way.
Should we let them know that I mean, they may be interested in knowing that they would not have the ability to intervene on our behalf on some of these questions.
That's like cheating on your wife.
It would also cost more because we're doing this with others, sharing the cost for a shared.
Well, Roger, are you just suggesting we let them know that we've entered into a contract with another attorneys? No, we have
No,
nothing that precludes us from ever doing that.
I guess I'm just thinking, like, if we get into a situation where we need them and they can't help us for some reason because we have this agreement.
This is a very limited agreement.
I was just gonna say, there's a
Sure.
lot of limitations in this.
I'm fine with it. It seems like, anyway, it's fine. I'm sure.
And
I'm
we're not
attorneys
under
have no
contract.
problem being engaged to help or to anyway, it's fine.
We don't have a contract with SPF, so it's not like we're obligated contractually.
No,
So
it's again, it's not that, like, if there's something that goes,
if it goes sideways, then we step away from this agreement after
Yeah, that's fine.
what's here is exhausted and then we go a different route.
Yeah, that's
Well, if you were
Fine.
concerned with a conflict of interest, I mean, that could happen even if they knew about this, or, you know, or it came up later for some reason, but it's probably,
I just can't imagine a situation, I guess, that I'm imagining, which is, can you consult on this matter? And they would say no, because you have a contractual relationship with that party. But that's making things up. I have no idea. So sorry, I'm just floating a. I thought it would be a good idea to ask them, but you know what? Marcia's right. They would probably just say, no, we'll do that for you, and then charge us their rate. So never mind.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the town manager to sign the engagement agreement for legal services for FERC relicensing of Wilder Dam and Great River Hydro projects as proposed by Monaghan Safar PLLC, and to commit to the expenditure of up to $3,000 as the town of Norwich share of the legal fees.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. There are no further questions or comments. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, we're down to the end of those items. I forgot to mention this earlier. I received an email from Peter Gregory at TRORC. Everybody else probably did too, asking us to complete a survey by Friday, October 18th. So if you would like to do that, I'm sure they would greatly appreciate hearing from select board members as well as planning commission members, the town manager and admins. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Marcia?
yes.
Roger?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We are adjourned at 9:55 p.m.
Recording stopped.
Good night.
Thank you.